Now, before we get into the other topics of the day, I want to get your reaction to the questions I just asked New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet. Paul, he admitted there that he didn't have to wait in the queue for everyone else for an ambulance. He got the health minister and the ambulance commissioner. He wasn't quite sure who made the phone call for the ambulance, but it was one of them. Is this appropriate?
Your middle stumped him. He was ready 4 days out to talk about the economy, to talk about why the Labor Party's bad, to say why he deserves another 4 years. And there you are asking a pesky question, throwing a last-minute grenade into things. And I thought you got him. The reality is that anyone who, in Australia, regardless of the state, is suffering from an ambulance system that, remember, in Victoria, 33 people died because the Triple O system didn't deliver a hospital on time. It's universal, it's national. In the case of, if I was the Premier and I was waiting, would I pick up the phone and try to speed up the process? Of course. But you can't pretend that that's not what happened. Now,
well, he didn't even call Triple O. He skipped the queue. He just rang straight away.
Well, and that's the point, right? Which is, he'll be able to say, on a stack of Bibles, he'll be able to say, I did not tell anyone to help. But implicit, when your boss calls you, is, please help. So he calls the health minister goes and moves a few things around, and the ambulance turns up. I'm glad it happened for his family. I'm glad he's okay, but it's not a luxury that other people have. And I repeat, these issues are literally life and death, but as we saw in Victoria, strangely not a vote mover when the union doesn't want to scandalise it.
Well, this isn't about the union, Gemma, because this is something I've been talking about on this show and writing about for 3 years now, since I saw firsthand. I was literally in the ambulance with my husband on the way to the hospital after waiting for 2 hours for the ambulance, and we rang 6 times. They kept saying they were going to turn up. I was holding my husband's hand, and I try not to cry talking about it, but I said, don't let my baby call anyone else mummy. I had an ectopic pregnancy rupture. I lost 40% of my blood in an internal bleed. I was lucky. Paul, we don't know the figures in New South Wales. Other people aren't so lucky. Other people are dying because 1 in 10 are waiting more than an hour for an ambulance when they have an urgent need.
Absolutely. Sorry, Gemma. But what I was saying about the union is that the union in New South Wales, because it's a Liberal government, is riding on the side of every ambulance how frustrated they are.
Right.
The exact same situation happened in Victoria, but they didn't ride on the side of the ambulance. In terms of your personal experience, I mean, again, it's like schools, it's like everything. They turn around and tell us there's more money than ever before, but everyone knows that the wait is longer than ever before, and the wait in the terms of an ambulance becomes traumatic. And just because you didn't die doesn't mean that there's not a trauma that goes on, including what you just talked about there and share with the audience. But sorry, Gemma.
My ectopic pregnancy, my mum nearly died from one after me, so I know exactly what you're talking about. That's horrendous, and it is traumatic, it's these two things in tension. Like you said, if you were the Premier, you probably would have done the same thing. If you were the Premier, if your husband was the Premier, he probably would have done the same thing. Does it make it okay? No. Do people look at it and go, that's unfair? I am going to take a possibly highly unpopular view here and say, should we risk a Labor government because of that? No. Something has to be done, but I would also say it doesn't matter. Based on my experience in Western Australia, the ambulance ramping there is horrendous. Like when I collapsed in the street almost a year ago, when I had a kidney problem, the day I was supposed to move to Sydney, funnily enough, I rang a friend who's a doctor and said, is the private emergency open at such and such hospital? And he said, yeah, because I knew what the ramping problem was. If I could get an ambulance, I was going to be stuck in it all day.
It's an issue.
Of course it is.
I mean, here we are. We will see tomorrow when the people... I'm so excited to see the People's Forum because I want to see what normal people ask.
Yeah, that's true.
Because right now, they don't want to talk about this stuff. They want to talk about all this sort of broad stuff. But state government is about service delivery, and we will see tomorrow night the failures of service delivery.
We've seen a lot of, in this election campaign, announcements increasing the speed limit, a child's future fund, various things like that. But, instead of a child's future fund, just make the hospitals work, make the ambulances work. We talk about the energy crisis. Like, make sure the lights are on. That's what's important to people.
Well, in fairness, there's a federal element to that.
Yeah, but this is why I think that Mark Latham is going to do particularly well, why I think the Greens are going to do particularly well, why even legalised cannabis is going to do particularly well, is that at this particular election there's going to be a lot of people who say, Team Red, Team Blue, I'm bored of them saying, at 5 minutes to midnight we care about you, and then for the other 4 years they basically do anything but the obvious. And you see it in our schools. I mean, what was that report from the Productivity Commission? We've spent $319 billion on education over the past 10 years. We've built lots of school halls, but guess what's happened? School's gone backwards.
Yeah.
Yet they'll stand at this election and say X billion, Y billion. People don't care about the numbers.
Yeah.
They care about their lived experience.